All right, welcome everybody to the Businessmap podcast. Today we have Raza Adil with us. So, Raza, we are very excited to have you on the Businessmap podcast today. Can you first of all share a little bit more about your experience in PMOs and specifically in the Saudi Arabian market?
Sure, Nikolai. Thank you so much. And hello to everyone who's tuning into this podcast. So, my name is Raza Adil. I'm primarily a strategy and planning professional, as well as project management expert. So, I have been working in the MENA region for 15 plus years in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Dubai. And I have worked in many different domains. So, I've worked in oil and gas, construction, manufacturing, banking, and so on. And almost all of these industries and organizations involved some sort of projects. Some were more heavy on them versus the others. And this gave me a very close look at what are the projects on the ground, what are the challenges, what factors influence them. And over the last 15 plus years, how this science has evolved and how certain challenges has still, uh, you know, been there throughout, and still we're battling them as of now. So we'll touch upon all of these themes and talk about a lot of different areas from my background and what I see on the ground reality in the MENA region.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing those details. For sure, it will be very interesting conversation because specifically PMOs, I think there are a lot of challenges right there, specifically in this industry, and with the world getting more and more digital, with AI coming in, it's important to touch upon these topics, how the PMO is evolving, how it's changing. So let's get started right from that. What do you see right now as perhaps the main challenge in PMOs? And specifically in the region that you mentioned, how do you see the future of the PMOs and how should they evolve from 2025 and 2026 onwards?
Very, very interesting point. And since you mentioned 2025 and 26 onward, I'm based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and naturally I will link a lot of our discussion with the local situation and challenges, as well as the projects. So a lot of us have heard about Vision 2030 that Saudi Arabia has. Yeah? It's something which is driving the country and taking us to the future. This is launched in two phases. So the first phase actually concludes in 2025, and from 26 till 2030 is the next phase. So we're talking at a very timely point in the calendar right now. Um, so 20 Vision 2030 is a very aggressive plan, and you can see how it has completely transformed the region, not just Saudi Arabia. However, there are certain issues which are very much on a reality on the ground. And how I like to conclude, or how I like to label it, is that we're trying to build cities of the future using the tools of 1995. So basically, what I mean is that we're still using spreadsheets as a primary tool to drive these projects. And the pace is fast. The projects are complex. There are billions of dollars involved, and you still are using Excel spreadsheets primarily in a lot of organizations, a lot of industry, in a lot of different industries as well. I do not think it will help you a lot that way. So what's happening with that? I'm not against spreadsheet. I'm a huge fan. I still use them on a daily basis. But what's happening is that PMOs and project management teams are spending 80% of their times collecting data, reporting it, making sure that the numbers are accurate. So they're left with very, very little time to actually focus on analyzing the numbers and presenting them strategically to the top management. So just imagine if you and again, these a lot of times these are not even visually presented. They are presented in a number format or tables. And just imagine if they were a visual format in a dashboard form, how much easier it would be to navigate through it. Okay.
Hmm.
Even going a step further, imagine if you can automate those dashboards. So that frees up half of your week at least to focus on analyzing the data, report, looking at the problems, solving the problems, rather than doing the manual firefighting and collecting and making sure the data is accurate.
Yes.
And to also link AI with this. So this is the area which AI is still not able to do yet, and that's the human element where you have large pools of data, you've collected it, you've gotten number crunching done, and now you can strategically use those numbers and the analysis to present it to the management. So this is still some area where AI is catching up, and as a human, as a well-developed professional, you can add a lot of value.
Right. Right. And what do you think about? So the PMOs heavily use Excel sheets, and from our experience in Businessmap, we've seen that a lot. Um, and most of these Excel sheets are focused on like output. They're tracking output related metrics. So, what do you think about linking more of these, the PMO metrics that are important to actual outcomes, business outcomes that are important for the business, and how should PMOs, get a seat in the table at the end of the day to drive strategic decisions?
Right. So we should stop looking at PMOs as just reporting clerks,
Mm,
and we should look at it as value drivers. Okay. So basically, we're talking about using PMO as a strategic partner. More
mm,
than doing just manual work. And this is what a lot of the management wants PMOs to do, to add value, not just report it. But as I said, most of their time already is busy battling the manual spreadsheets and making sure the data is collected from different owners and departments. So I think a lot of time is getting wasted in those areas. So the outcome that the management is expecting is not being delivered because there is a roadblock. Also, I believe there's uh, everyone prefers visualized formats and dashboards. It's all nice, but again, you need to have the right workflow and process rightfully designed with the stakeholders involved so that it's meaningful, it's giving you actual live information, and it's actionable as well, which is very important. So from this angle, basically what you need to do is PMO must stop reporting status and start
mhm.
reporting opportunities which they see out of the numbers that you're getting.
Right. Um, and one more question on this topic. Do you think that management should see like the whole picture from the strategy to the execution? Like, do you think that PMOs should be able to have this a view of clarity and just this clarity across the organization, how the outcomes are moving, and then how the projects move those outcomes forward? Because this is something that specifically we as a software platform, Businessmap, have been focused on to provide a complete clarity to project organizations, not just the output, not just about the output side, but the outcome side. So, have you seen in your experience uh, PMOs that connect those two separate worlds? Sometimes strategy is often in spreadsheets while the work happens elsewhere. So, what is your experience in that?
That's a very good question, actually. And so I've been parts of strategy and planning departments. Strategy is something which is forward-looking. You're trying to make a vision and mission and take direction, take the organization in a certain direction. And I've also been in performance management teams, which are analyzing your month's performance, quarter's performance, or whatever. So one is forward-looking, one is backward-looking, like a rear-view mirror analysis. Project management falls somewhere in between. So you have designed a
Mhm.
strategy and now you launch a project and now you're trying to track progress, right? And I see the project management a lot of times operate in a silo. So while the project itself has spun out of a strategy or to take organization in a certain direction, often see the project management teams are so much lost in their own, nuts and bolts, or not nitty gritty details, that they're not thinking strategically. They're not concerned with
Mm,
why are we doing this project, what is the goal, what are we trying to achieve. They're too busy with the day to day firefighting. And this is again why am I bringing it time and again. I've seen this far too many times that there's a project side, there's a project manager for that, and then there are strategy people in the head office. There's a huge disconnect between these two, and a lot of
mhm,
times there seems like they're not even part of the same organization or working for the same mission. You know, and it should be a very close collaboration and high level of communication between the two organizations, which is again something I want to highlight. Um, Without taking names, I was part of an organization, a huge construction giant,
mm,
where the joke, and I was part of the planning and strategy team, so I was based in the head office, and we had many project sites. And the joke was that on some of the sites we couldn't even locate a crane. So we're not talking about a drill machine or a small hammer. We're like, where did this crane go? Because we had to mobilize and demobilize them and all that. And
yeah.
it's a whole different beast when you're on a project site. So that's a very textbook, not textbook, a very real life example of so much miscommunication that happens between project teams and the strategy or planning teams, which is uh, which is something that happens when the companies grow too much and too fast.
Mm, right, right. Yeah, thank you for sharing those insights because we've seen this exact challenge. The strategy happens in boardrooms, and happens in one place, and then the project management standards just follow a different path. It's a whole another world, and in many times communicating the strategic moves takes a very very long time, like communicating the priorities to the teams takes a long time. I was wondering, out of curiosity, have you seen something like this in your environment where just priorities change and this takes a lot of time to be communicated to the people actually driving the work?
All the time, Nikolai. This issue is felt in all sorts of organizations that I've been part of. So you're talking about the lack of communication. Yeah, that's one problem. I would say a lot of times there is a problem of no intention of communication. So
Mm,
something happened at the C level or top management level, and they said, okay, fine, yeah, we will, change the scope, modify it, change the timelines, add a new, sub scope to the project, uh, and sometimes it doesn't go to the foot soldier. And there. So I would like to bring an example of a classic example of John F. Kennedy visiting NASA back in the 60s. And, he comes across someone who's mopping the floor. And he asks
right.
him, what are we doing here? And, the guy says, I'm putting the man on the moon. So you can see how clearly the mission of NASA was communicated to everyone at each level. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why you make a project successful. As difficult as of putting actually a man on the moon back in the
Mm,
60s. So it's a classic example where the communication lacks happen, and the example of the missing crane is also a similar situation. So as I told you, there is a communication gap for sure, but even taking a step back, there is a missing step of actually trying to communicate it to different levels of your organization. And they're having situations as part of strategy and PMOs that we actually did strategy alignment sessions or strategy awareness sessions or project management alignment sessions. Every time there's a scope change, even when there is not a change, you need to, let's say, every quarterly, semi-annually, s- involve the key stakeholders and remind them of what we're doing and what changes have occurred, whether the procedures have changed, whether the scope has changed. So that is very important. And because there's so much of firefighting going on, there are tight deadlines and there are deliverables. Uh, Many people tend to ignore this, and as a
Right.
result, they would suffer, financially and in terms of time and reputation-wise as well.
Right. And yeah, what is your like advice to our audience? I think people listening to this podcast would be interested to hear how they should go about creating those strategic alignment sessions to better align and better communicate. Do you have any like tips and tricks maybe that you can share regarding this?
Sure. So part of my job requires me to present to all sorts of audience. That includes C-level audience, that includes management, that includes mid management, and you cannot deliver the same presentation to all three or four different levels. You need to
Yes.
tailor the message. You need to think of the audience first. And again, at the C level, you're talking about very strategic stuff, and it's very few messages, but strategic. As you go down the organization, you have to trickle it down. You have to break it down to bite-sized information. You know, the information which is relevant to that level of the organization, so that they can relate to it, they can understand. And see, any person who's in the audience is thinking, "What's in it for me? What is
Mm.
the information that's relevant to me in this?" So that's the key mindset that you need to have when you're approaching these presentations and meetings. You're starting from the C level, going to the directors, senior management, going to mid management, and then mid management, and so on. So you try to translate or cascade the message according to the level of audience and make it relatable for them.
Mm.
Otherwise, you will alienate them, and they will zone out, and they will not get it. So that's primarily the message that you should look at.
Right. Yeah, I think that's extremely important because we've also seen from our practice people not, specifically people in project management work and PMOs, just going to the C level executives and talking about their deliverables, right? And not specifically about the things that the C level are worried about. And we know that the C level is worried about outcomes, just business outcomes. Is the business moving forward? Are we saving money? Are we making more money, right? What is our competitive advantage, and so on? So, bringing the topic of money, I would like to shift the conversation a little bit to, um, cost centers versus profit centers, and PMOs being, seen historically as a cost center. How do you think that we should turn spend into more like value creation stuff?
Very, very much a valid question. And as you're saying, the top management is concerned with the bottom line. How much money are we making? How much profit are we making? How much cost are we saving? And these are the main areas where PMO can contribute. So if they can highlight how they're able to avoid cost overruns or project delays, that means you're saving the organization, you know, dollar, millions, billions, or depending on the size of the project. And again, by shifting this mindset from reporting to more strategic analysis, it goes from top to bottom. If the
Mm.
project management head thinks of himself as a profit generating uh, authority, not a cost center authority, automatically the whole approach will change. So just like the person who said, "I'm putting a man on the moon," the project management head can also assume that I'm saving money for the organization or I'm generating profit for the organization by making sure the reporting and the strategic analysis that we are offering is helping with the risk management, helping us avoid any delays or injuries or production overruns. And again, this is the value that the PMOs can add by changing their mindset from reporting to being a strategic part for the
Right.
organization.
Right. And again believe that in your experience you've seen mostly, these cost estimations and budgeting has been done on Excel sheets. So do you think that this is something that should move into digital dashboards too? And yeah, what do you think is the value of just organizations using dashboards to report on budgets, to look at risks and so on?
See, first of all, time is of essence. And as we're talking about, especially if you look at the Middle East region, and I will be specifically talking about Saudi Arabia, as Saudi Arabia is moving towards the second phase of its Vision 2030, they have already achieved impressive milestones as planned. Yet there is the second phase left. And the leadership has an amazing vision, which is transforming the country and it's going to get even further. That means there are a lot of deadlines to be met. That means there are a lot of deliverables still to be delivered. And that also means that you need to stay on track and make sure things are working like a well oiled machine and projects are delivered on time, if not before time. So this approach of still doing manual stuff will not help you achieve these goals. You know, as I said earlier, we're trying to build cities of future with technology from 1995, which is the spreadsheet. This will not help you. And again, with the rapid growth of technological revolutions in every area, whether it's construction, medical, or you know project management, you need to start using these tools so you can keep up with the pace. Otherwise, the world will move way forward than your pace, and this will be a big struggle. But again, simply from the point of view of saving time, saving cost, and saving money, and avoiding any risks of poor planning because you were too busy doing the number crunching and data gathering. The analytical part, the more you automate things, the more you make them less time consuming, the more time you will get to analyze things, make them better and future.
Right. So you talk a lot about the first phase versus the second phase. So yeah, once again, out of curiosity, we are in a midpoint right now, I would say, right? And the second phase starts from 2026, it goes to 2030. So I think it will be interesting to share with our audience. What have you seen were the lessons learned, from this first phase of transforming the country, and what lessons should we bring to the second phase, so we finalize the transformation of the MENA region with success.
Well, there are a number of challenges that are being faced. When a society or an economy goes through a massive transformation, of course, you are still trying to play catch up in a lot of areas. But I think the if I have to pick one area which is the most challenging um, and continues to be a challenge, it would be the cultural resistance. And I don't mean the culture of the country. I'm talking about the culture of organizations. So a lot of industries are still not catching up with the modern ways of doing things, modern ways of doing construction or management consultancy or you name it. And I'm not saying there are not remarkable transformations already. I'm super impressed because my I started my career in Saudi itself, and I was in Qatar for 10 years, and I came back and I couldn't recognize Saudi because it had moved forward with such a remarkable pace already. But because the world is moving fast, the technology is changing daily, if not hourly. And similarly, with the tight deadlines and ambitious projects that you need to have a very open approach and very proactive approach towards you know getting the best global practices and applying them locally. And that's
Hmm.
where the local part comes in. So think globally, act locally. And by act locally, you need to address the cultural nuances, which is again, a lot of international organizations or players uh, go wrong here, that they will bring the best product, which is sold successfully internationally. Um, but when they come to the region, they are not able to translate it according to the local practices and customs and nuances, or the challenges that the local market have, which is very specific to this region. So it's basically about translating the global practices or the best frameworks to the local way of doing things. So I think the cultural resistance or cultural transformation is the single biggest challenge that I would say is holding back a lot of organizations. And as you know,
Right.
culture itself is not a static thing; it's an ever evolving thing. Whether you talk about a society or an organization.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to mention that in Europe, for example, we've specifically had this challenge for a long time, and when everybody was talking about agile transformations, right? Moving into a more agile state of working and transforming entire companies, the cultural resistance was always cited as the number one challenge. So I know that you also have experience in Europe and you've worked with European customers. What? So I guess the G local standards that you mentioned is about bringing stuff from more like the European side, the American side into the Saudi Arabian side and the MENA market. So what, in your opinion, are the most like important technological advancements and uh, just advantages from the Western world that we can bring into the MENA market?
That's a very wide question, actually. I mean,
Mm.
again, uh, when we talk about technology, there are so many different aspects to it. So, and I do see in Saudi they're very actively looking at technology for different areas. So I see medtech being discussed. I see health as health tech is medtech, agri tech. I see ed tech, which is education related. So all of these, and of course, then you have the other, industrial and other parts of the technology. So the country is the vision of the country is very well balanced, and it touches upon the health side, the education side, the agriculture side. So there is a lot of partnerships that can happen from, let's say, European or Western markets or organizations that they're technologically well established, to partner up with local players. And to be honest, as you mentioned, I work with a lot of European companies, and most of these companies are actually tech companies who are coming to the region, and I help them, partner up. Um, so so it's already happening, and they're bringing their time-tested product to the region. But again, the cultural nuance has to be there. They need to understand the specific challenges faced by the market, the companies which are operating in the Saudi market. So tailor that according to this. And just mentioning a particular situation, which basically said the biggest consumer of technology in the Saudi market is the government, not the
Mm.
private sector. Which is usually the other way around in Europe. It's
Yeah.
the private sector, and the government is at the back supporting them. But here, the government is super advanced, and they're leading it. They're helping organizations come up to speed and get these tools implemented. Uh, in Saudi, there are so many events that happen, and a lot of them are around technology. And I love attending them because you see how fast the pace is going, and the players from international markets who come here and are trying to partner up. So, as I said, the question is very wide, and there is no
Yes.
specific answer to that. But I, I, I see Saudi, the government and organizations trying to get into different areas, technology.
Yeah, that's a very important insight that you shared here. And I totally agree that it's a very wide question and it's probably a discussion on its own. Um, but something that popped in my head right now is that specifically government transformations are um, very restricted, I would say, here in Europe. So this is, very interesting that the government leads the transformation in the MENA market, because here you have all kinds of restrictions, some governments doing stuff that they've been doing for many years, and it's a huge challenge to transform them and to teach them new ways of working. So I think here it's a good time to maybe a little bit talk about a personal story, if you have to share a story about you working with an organization where you've helped them transform. And maybe it's a government organization, maybe not, but um, do you have a story that you can share with our audience?
I mean, I can share stories about transforming certain organizations, and frankly, this is what a strategy and planning professional does. Ideally speaking, it helps he or she helps the organization transform from point A to point B. Um, and again, I remember this particular incident, not incident, but instance where I was working with a construction giant.
Mm.
Where they had a massive number of headcount, maybe 30,000 at that time. They're one of the biggest in the country. And so they had their own training center and they had their own catering department. And they were training, 30,000 staff. So they had a huge training facility. They had equipment which you will not find in the regular training center. And they said, okay, already have all this facility. We are training our own people. We are giving certifications. Why not entertain the outsiders? And this was an idea which was floated by the strategy and planning team, which I was part of. And this is again where how you can think in an innovative way and turn it from a cost center into a profit center. And
Mm.
after the successful implementation of that, we also use the same ideology and transform the catering department to uh, from a cost center to a profit center. And how was that done? Again, we were catering to 30,000 people, and we had the facilities, we had the kitchen, we had the infrastructure, the delivery vehicles, and all of that. And we said, fine, let's use this and also serve clients outside. And this was basically in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, in Jubail area, and there are a lot of construction sites there already. So it made sense to, and it was not a very far-fetched goal. So these are the quick examples that comes to my mind where you can try to be innovative and see with the minimum requirements how you can convert something from cost center or cost driver to a profit value driven organization.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that quick story. That's, I believe, a topic on its own, because there are many. I believe that every organization is different on its own, so there is no one size fits all approach, and um, just working with every organization is a story on its own. So I would like to talk a little bit about the human science of leadership here. I believe that this is a very important topic, and I'm just interested to learn more about what is the human element of leadership, specifically in the MENA market and in your experience.
Oh my God! So that's an area which is often overlooked in project
Hmm.
management, and again because you're dealing with a machinery, if so to say. I mean, because different parts of the organization are acting as parts of a machine, and then the machine is rolling nonstop. Um, and a lot of times we miss out on the fact that this whole engine is driven by actually humans, whether they're at the top or they're in the middle management or the frontline workers. So we're always looking at dashboards and looking at budgets and all of that, and looking at basically a project health of the project. but we are rarely focusing on the leaders' health or the humans who are involved in the project. And I don't mean health in the sense that whether they have a fever or not. No. I'm talking about the
Mm,
burnout.
mm.
I'm talking about the mental stress. I'm talking about the challenges the leaders are facing with their work. Because as a leader, you need to drive your army. You know, you need to be a believer of the mission vision yourself before you convince others to act upon it. Yeah. And again, I've asked across my network who people who are involved in project management and various mega projects. There's a huge burnout, and there's very rarely the element of looking at the human mental health in this case. So if you look at it, we're basically doing billions of dollars of projects and investing zero in the emotional resilience and emotional health of the leaders, or close to zero. I mean, it's a negligible amount, and it's something which is non-existing. It definitely needs to be highlighted. And yes, this is definitely an area where we can do a whole separate discussion because I'm a huge advocate of emotional intelligence, and I talk about it whenever I get a chance. It's something which all of us get affected by. And again, this
Right.
is something which we should keep on the forefront of our radar. So again, if the human element is not taken care of, that means the engine will overheat and the project will come to a pause, which is not anyone's preference. And it doesn't matter how good your dashboard is, how automated it is, if the humans who are running the show are not looked after, the dashboard itself can.
Right. I think that's yeah, a very important point to further discuss because mm, for example, I'm a very big fan of like lean leadership and the standards coming from Toyota, and specifically um, the father, so-called, of the Toyota production system, Teiichi Ono, who says that pretty much the best thing that leaders can do is respect for people, and not just use people as resources, right, but as assets. And when you're using someone as an asset, you have to be aware of their of their well-being, of not getting them overburnt and so on. So that's a very important conversation that we can have. But I'm also interested here to learn about the role of AI, right? Because right now everything is going AI, and a lot of executives are thinking that AI could replace many of the human capabilities. And specifically, I know that there are a lot of project managers worried about their status in the new AI driven world. So I was wondering to understand more about your experience with AI and the future of PMOs, specifically in the AI driven world going forward.
Well, the AI is a reality, and we should not feel threatened by it. Rather, use it to our advantage and use it as a buddy. Yep. Just like any previous technological advancement that we have come across. So one thing which is very obvious is that the area where AI can play a big part is uh, the automation aspect or augmentation. Okay, so anything which is repetitive in nature or very data driven can easily be augmented or automated. And that means all those spreadsheets that we used to manually put in numbers and columns and whatnot, AI can help us with that. So and that's why throughout this podcast we are discussing why do we need to free up our time and let technology or AI take care of collecting data, putting it in order, updating statuses, even generating reports. And this will give you at least 40 to 50% more time on focusing the human intelligence element, where you as a human look at the numbers, look at the fine dashboard, and try to make a decision. So that's the biggest thing, where AI can help. The other thing, because AI can deal with the large numbers of data, and historically, data, you can put a lot of variances into a lot of situational context to it. It can help you a lot with risk management.
Mm.
So AI can actually be a crystal ball where you can look into the future risks that a company or an economy may be exposed to. So this can help as a predictive tool in terms of risk management. And which company or organization doesn't want to avoid any risk if they can? It will save them dollars. It will save their reputation. It will save time as well. So I think AI can definitely be used in many different ways, and these are just some quick ideas that came to my mind.
Right. But yeah, once again, I think that we shouldn't be, like you mentioned, threatened by AI, but most we shouldn't. We should embrace it and just see uh, the positive aspects, how it could help us. Um, I was wondering, do you have any experience with implementing AI across PMOs also, and maybe a quick story that you could share?
Of course, I've been parts of various setups and organizations where we had a manual, again, spreadsheet framework, which we tried to translate it into an automated dashboard. And while there is a lot of glamour to it, it's not as easy as it may sound, and
Yeah.
there are real challenges. And the statement that we use, garbage in, garbage out, it's so true. So you really need to have your house in order. First of all, you need to have the proper processes and workflows, and the distribution of data and the flow charts before you can start implementing this tool properly. So the AI or an automated software will not come and solve your problems unless you have already achieved organizational clarity or a certain level of maturity in your processes. And then you can do a well defined workflow and an automated process or a software which can help you with achieving your goals. So that's the number one problem that I faced. Having clarity, first of all, in what do you want this automated tool to help you with, and
Right.
not expect that to just completely come and do its magic.
Right. Right. Yeah. Totally agree with that. It should be, yeah, the predictive parts of AI specifically are extremely helpful, also going forward. And it will just get better. But once again, we shouldn't feel threatened by it. So, as a summary, could you like share how do you see this next phase of transformation of in specifically the MENA market? What do you think that PMOs should focus on and should start doing right now to realize the outcomes that really matter in the next phase up until 2030?
Sure. To me, it's very clear. The technology is here. We should look at it as a partner. AI is going to potentially eat up a lot of jobs. Okay, there is no mystery about it at all. But what we as a society, as a community, and as organizations need to be very clear on is that we need to have a culture of openness and culture of acceptance. So the cultural resistance has to go. We are going
Mm.
through a massive transformation as a society, as an economy, as a country as well. So first of all, have a culture where you are proactively accepting the change and using it to your advantage. And when we talk about the culture, we talk about the humans. So you need to make sure people who are working on the organization are aware of the strategy, are aware of the challenges. You're supporting them in solving those challenges, and the biggest way you can help them solve these challenges is by upskilling and reskilling. You know, so make sure the challenges that you're facing, the tools that you're planning to use, you equip your human capital with the right tools to use those softwares and dashboards and help the organization go to the next level.
Right. That's a great summary. I would say that, yeah, it's about the tooling, but it's also about reskilling people and making them, like future proof, I would say, for the world of AI and so on. Because at the end of the day, human decision making will be extremely valuable because humans can have context which AI can't really have. So thank you very
And
much for. Yep, yep.
if
Go
I
on.
may conclude from my side, I remember a quote which said that the illiterates of future are not those who cannot read or write. The illiterate of future would be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So
Mm,
we should expect ourselves to be in a constant loop of upskilling and reskilling, and that's the way forward.
yes. Maybe we should say like continuous improvement.
Abs-
Always, yes.
Absolutely,
Always looking for there is always a better way at the end of the day, right?
absolutely. There's always
Yeah.
room for improvement, and we can always do better than what we have done in the past.
Well, that's I think a great way to end our conversation. I think we raised a lot of topics that could become conversations on their own. So I would be happy to talk to you about them, in a separate podcast about one of the specific points that we raised. But for now, thank you very much for taking participation in our podcast. It was, I think, very valuable conversation, and it was very interesting to learn um, just the development of PMOs and the future of PMOs specifically in the market where you operate now in the MENA market. So thank you once again for your participation.
My pleasure, and it was absolutely lovely to be in this podcast with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.